Brandon Thurston from Wrestlenomics is up next, and we're going to follow Brandon with John Pollock from Post Wrestling.
Delivering on the returns, increasing our margins.
Ratings go down the toilet if I'm not here.
All I do is simply put the math in my favor.
We agree that Brandon and John do good work.
The reason is simple wrestling economics.
I've been told the Netflix numbers. I've been told the metrics a little bit, probably 5 different times. I still don't get it.
There were respectable wrestling journalists who needed answers.
Thank you very much, members of the media. I hope you all go to hell.
How about we pop a number right here, right now?
Whole part of the show, man.
It's all part of the show. I am John Pollock, joined as always by Brandon Thurston from Wrestlenomics. What a show we have for you today.
Yep.
We are not, this show has no affiliation with WWE. We are going to state right off the top.
No.
As surprising as that might be to people out there.
Is there any affiliation with any other wrestling company that we have?
Well, I mean, we have fielded offers over time from WWC in Puerto Rico. They were interested in acquiring us. We turned down the Cologne estate. There was Fuck out of Japan. They were pretty aggressive when it came to overseas expansion. But no, we have remained independent throughout all of this time.
You're not bought and paid for by Tony Khan?
No, I never made the fake memo that circulated all those times that comes up. Were you
No.
were you on the fake memo? No, I don't think you were.
No, I wasn't. No.
Oh.
But fighting Ultimate Crazy Kings, we are reminded that's what FUCK stands for.
Yes, exactly. The illustrious fighting Ultimate Crazy Kings.
I did Google it, and it's a difficult company to Google. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's you really need to know what you are looking for. So we are going to be going through. Yes, we will be talking about WWE Radio, not to be confused with Radio WWF. We've done a flip and a brand change over all these decades, but we will talk about that. We're going to talk about the ESPN cuts and how they affected one wrestling / MMA / boxing reporter. We are also going to go through what we watched, Netflix's report on its engagement figures, which they are going to scale back from a semi-annual release to just once per year.
Really?
Did you not hear this?
This news to me. No, I didn't hear this.
This was many.
Is this an exclusive that you have? Is this like a Hollywood Reporter had an exclusive today? Is this an exclusive?
It's not. No, this was circulated last week that they are going to scale this back from every 6 months to every year. Now I don't know when this is going to. Less information for us to comb through.
I always say less information is better. Transparency is not what we want. If you're running a business, yes.
Yes. I don't know if we're going to get one in 6 months. Like when will this yearly annual release start? That is going to be the question.
End of the year. So are they doing one in January for the full year? No, this will be in the middle of each year.
That would be weird. I would think they just do it at the end of the year. Like maybe in 6 months we get another one, and then it becomes a yearly thing. Like it's like, why would you be dropping this in the middle of the year every year?
Is it because there's WWE data in here? Is that why?
Maybe WWE. Well, maybe WWE Unreal data might be removed moving forward.
WWE has a lot of sway. Okay, I'd be careful what you say.
I don't know. These are big broadcasting outlets. These are big companies that WWE is involved with. They can't just be, pointing the finger in this direction and expecting these massive companies to just lay down. Okay? We have letter grades to assign, okay? I don't care if you're the WWE, okay? We're the worldwide leader, right? Said nobody over the last year. But let us start with the latest going on in the Janel Grant case, because this week we got this filing on behalf of Ann Callis, representing Janel Grant, stating that Janel Grant, defendants World Wrestling Entertainment, and Vincent K. McMahon, together known as the parties, jointly report that the parties have executed an agreement to arbitrate their dispute. Pursuant to that agreement, within 5 business days, the plaintiff shall execute and cause to be filed a stipulation of voluntary dismissal with prejudice, causing the action to be dismissed in its entirety as to both remaining defendants, but without prejudice to the parties' rights to pursue their claims and defenses in arbitration.
With and without prejudice, what do those two
Can you break
opposite
down
terms mean?
Yes, that this case this lawsuit will be dropped with prejudice, but that doesn't mean they cannot pursue the arbitration claims.
What does prejudice mean? It means they're going to make up their mind ahead of time?
It means that they are not going to, there will be no revisiting of the charges in this lawsuit.
With prejudice means you can't bring it back again. Without prejudice means it's going away for now, but it can come back again. Anyway, is this case over with now? It's pretty close. So within 5 days of this, and they say 5 calendar days? What does it say? Plaintiff shall execute and cause to be filed, blah, blah, blah. Within 5 business days. And this was filed on the 20th. Today is the 23rd. So probably next Monday, we'll see a cause to be filed, a stipulation of voluntary dismissal with prejudice on behalf of Janel Grant. And then it will be to Judge Sarah F. Russell to swing the gavel, and this will be all done in federal court, and they will take their litigation to private arbitration, where who knows if we'll know anything about what happens there. So is this litigation over with? It'll be over with after the judge approves, presumably, and almost certainly Judge Sarah F. Russell will approve of this stipulation of voluntary dismissal with prejudice, I would think. And that will do it for what the public gets to know about this, presumably, unless something makes its way out of arbitration somehow.
Yeah, I mean the lawsuit is like 2 steps away from being dropped at this point. It is not a case like some people have leaped to the conclusion that this is going to be settled. It very well may be settled, but they are not at that stage yet. There is still the intention to move toward arbitration pending this judge approving this, which, I mean, it would be pretty stunning if the judge, like both parties or all 3 parties are in agreement about moving to arbitration. Like this seems like this will be sent along by Judge Russell.
This dispute being settled and this dispute going to arbitration are 2 different things. I see no reason at this point to think that Janel Grant has gotten money, some sort of monetary settlement, just to go to arbitration. Now, if there's a actual whole settlement of this dispute, maybe at that point. But again, if that happens in arbitration, I don't know that we'll know about it or know the amount of money.
No, I don't know what we would know after the arbitration beyond the process being completed.
I don't know. I don't know if we would even know that. It depends on, and what it probably depends on is the terms that they presumably have now agreed to about what the conditions of arbitration will be and the exact terms under which it will be confidential, which we also don't know, such as the nature of private arbitration.
Yes, that's the nature of arbitration. The worst outlet for any of these cases to go for our
not good if you're a journalist. No,
not as much. All right, let's talk a bit about where do you want to go next, Brandon? You tell me.
You
know what?
Let's just
so I don't forget it this time. Tell us what the latest is on your challenge in the merger lawsuit. Okay, this is the big news. We're not gonna push this to the end of the show.
So this is what I have spent most of my week and weekend doing. As we discussed last week, I filed Brandon H. Thurston's 3rd notice of challenge. Now, I want to be reserved in what I say here, but So I have filed the notice of challenge. You can read those documents. Those are publicly filed documents. I wrote a very short article just disclosing that and sharing the actual court filings. I've challenged, once again, conventionally, some of the filings that are in the merger lawsuit, which are either completely under seal or have public versions of them, but they have redactions. And we'll do I need to, is my audio okay?
We're getting some crackling. We're getting some crackling. My expert opinions have weighed in on this. I don't know if you maybe want to like exit and return, or
I'll be right back.
Okay, you just try that. I will continue. I am not going to give Brandon's update on the on his latest challenge. What's the super chat we have here from Andrew Brown? Thank you for the super chat. Any comments on the report about JPMorgan about being concerned about WWE Creative and being lukewarm about TKO? I will ask Brandon if he saw. I have not seen the JPMorgan report in question here, but allegedly JPMorgan in one of its latest reports had cited, I guess, fan dissatisfaction with WWE Creative as something that they are monitoring, which is not typically in the realm of what is brought up in a lot of these analysts' reports when it comes to the companies that they are monitoring and advising on whether this is overvalued or undervalued stock. But it was apparently raised in this latest JPMorgan analysis.
I will look into this while we're on the air. See if I can pull up this JPMorgan report.
You're coming in clear.
Yes. Am I good now? Is the audio better?
You're sounding good to me. So
okay.
Yeah, if Brandon tracks us down, we can maybe revisit it before the end of the show. But thank you for the super chat. Let's get back to your challenge and where things stand. This is in regards to the merger lawsuit. You are making friends at a rapid rate. Many of the high end legal variety. But tell me about where things stand on your challenge. Any updates that you can share publicly?
So I made a challenge on things that are on the docket. Typical, what we might call filed documents. These are things that are either exhibits that had never been filed yet, but they did have an entry on the docket, or they're public versions that do exist and they are public, but there's black box redactions on them. And I've challenged what I think I should challenge out of what's left there. But then I've also challenged, as people, I don't know, following this case closely will remember, there were pre-trial briefs in this case from both the plaintiffs and the grouped defendants, which are Vince and the rest of them, Nick, Paul, George, and Michelle. So they both filed these 60 some odd page pre-trial briefs in which they referenced not only things that were on the docket or had been on the docket at one point or another, but they also referenced exhibits and depositions that are part of this massive joint exhibit list that has like 2,500 exhibits on it. Out of what's in that exhibit list, they referenced a few hundred of those exhibits, and many of those exhibits have never been public before. And I've challenged those with good reason, I believe, with plenty of authority, both from the pre-trial order, the order that was entered and approved by the court about sort of how trial would happen. So they referenced all of these exhibits that had never been public before, and part of my challenge said, I'm challenging those exhibits too. I want those to be public. And so we've been negotiating a stipulation this week about what the scheduling will be, about how this is dealt with. And the WWE D&O defendants, which is Nick, Paul, George, Michelle, attorneys, or an attorney for the D&O defendants. We've been in negotiations for the last few days, and the number, there's like 30 lawyers that are included on this email list. And in the midst of us debating the merits about whether the, let's call them pretrial brief information, whether that was actually, whether public access actually applied, whether you could actually challenge those, that's the main source of dispute, or has been. And in the midst of this negotiation, the D&O defendants filed a motion So usually what we've done is we've negotiated it through email, and then we all agree to it and say, here, court, here, your honor, here's our stipulation. But in the midst of that, things weren't going well, or they may have been approaching a deadline that they were concerned about. Anyway, they filed a motion and said, these are all things we want. And I filed a response and said, these are a couple other things that I would want. We came back today, though, and we agreed on the terms, the schedule, etc. I won't get into the details. It's not that interesting. But there will be there is a schedule that has been submitted to the court. The judge will consider it. If the judge approves it, we'll have certain dates. But myself and the WWE D&O defendants, and the defendants in general, so this purportedly they're speaking, I don't know if on behalf of Vince is correct, but Vince and Vince's attorneys are in agreement about this position that the pretrial brief information, according to them, is not subject to public access. I have held firm that, no, according to the pretrial order, according to Leo Investments v. Tamales Bay Capital, who could forget that case back in September 2025?
Huge
decided by Vice Chancellor Laster, J. Travis Laster himself. I believe that material is subject to public access. I'm confident that it is. We will presumably, if the judge approves of our stipulation, we will each have the opportunity on July 30th to submit letters to the court, to submit some arguments. Letters are limited to 1,000 words each. And then at some point, the court will decide. Again, that's all assuming that the judge approves of our stipulation and proposed order.
Well, it sounds like you are on the right track. 30 lawyers, you say, give or take.
Yes, and so some of these emails are part of the public record now because they were filed as exhibits. So if you'd like to, at some point, I mean, you have to get into File and Server Express. But if you'd like to see myself and WWE's fantastic and highly skilled lawyers debating the merits of Rule 5.1G and Leo Investments v. Tamales Bay Capital, that is all finally on the public record.
So I could challenge this and want all of this released.
You are a person. You can self-represent.
Confirmed.
I don't think you would need to be U.S. I think a Canadian could do it. I don't see any reason. I'm not aware of any rules or precedents or controlling authority that tells us that you have to be a U.S. citizen to do this. So I think you could.
We could get a whole chain of command of getting all of this out. Okay, well, we appreciate the update there, Brandon. So now we're gonna shift focus to a topic that I know everybody craves our discussion about. We're gonna talk about wrestling media because it's all one big group. We get on the phone every week, every one of us, and we discuss how we're going to share what opinion, what we're going to think of this promotion this week, that promotion the next week. That's how all of this works. And weighing in with his thoughts this week was, a familiar voice who wanted to share his opinion of the wrestling media.
I listened the other day to, maybe when was it? Maybe to
Busted Open.
Yeah, and it's all about WWE. Everything.
Yeah,
everything. And I don't know how they get by with that. If you're a good producer and you get more than one thing to talk about, then talk about it. But this is certainly kind of head scratcher to me that it's it's just turned into a WWE infomercial.
So pretty strong accusation there. A WWE infomercial. So not to just take this lying down, we have to hear from the other side. What would you state about being called a WWE infomercial?
I cannot believe that a show that started for 1 hour, 1 day a week, is now going to be partnered with the greatest pro wrestling company, the biggest pro wrestling company, not just now, but ever in this great sport. And make no mistake about it. If you think I'm letting the foot off the gas, if you think you're not going to get what you're used to hearing from Dave LaGreca on a daily basis, you think I'm going to stop ranting? No!
Brandon, Can you believe this news?
No!
So.
No!
So, Busted Open. I've been on a couple times.
You have?
Yeah. Have you been on Busted Open ever?
Never been invited, no.
Wow. They've always been nice to me. But this is WWE getting more partnerships with media. Now, I wouldn't necessarily would you call Busted Open hard-hitting journalism?
I think that they have a certain
talk radio. It's talk radio.
That's what it is. I mean, the facts are that this channel, that we should inform people that maybe are not aware of today's news, that WWE Radio is going to replace what is now Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7, which is the SiriusXM channel that all of these shows are housed on. Beginning Monday, it will become WWE Radio. That will include Busted Open Radio. They've got their show with Sam Roberts, with Peter Rosenberg. But in addition now, the PLEs are going to be called on the channel by Vic Joseph and Booker T, beginning with SummerSlam. They will be adding Cody Rhodes and Stephanie McMahon's podcasts, meaning you could end up on one of those shows, Brandon. And this was not mentioned in the press release, I don't think, but it was mentioned by Dave LaGreca, simulcasting of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, which I find really interesting that WWE would be able to have that carve out to be able to shop like the radio rights for their shows. But that's what was mentioned there. So, I mean, many of the personalities on that channel are already under some kind of agreement with WWE. I think that there are very few exceptions, from like Dave LaGreca, Denise Salcedo. I don't think Mark Henry technically has an agreement with WWE, but is kind of friends and family of WWE. But I think that this is, whatever you are going to assume from this, like I think like this very much is going to just turn this into like this is going to be the WWE's channel, and I'm really curious.
Literally, this is something that has up to this point been branded as Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7. On July 27th, it becomes WWE Radio.
Yes, and I don't know. I have seen enough of these things to happen where nothing's going to change. Look, we just said just saying the letters AEW are going to be considered edgy, that we talk about AEW. But it was like if you're AEW, are you sending guests onto WWE Radio? Like, are you? Are you sending MJF to do promo work for WWE Radio?
Well, is Thunder Rosa still involved as a co-host? We'll look into that. So there's an AEW pay-per-view this Sunday. This channel, this satellite radio channel, becomes W Radio on Monday. Is it going to be talk about AEW Redemption on Monday?
I'm sure there will be, but it's
on W Radio. W Radio is going to talk about AEW's pay-per-view.
I think in the immediately, it's not even so much of what will they talk about? What will they not talk about? To me, it's just the optics of this are impossible to overcome. Everything they ever say about either side, it's going to be so scrutinized by people that it's a very untenable situation for the people involved here. But that's that's the deal that your company made, and that's what this is at this point. So, we do not need. This will dovetail in very well to our Andreas Hale story. You want to tell me this is a company that got their back up against the wall over a C grade. So it's the template is right there. You want to operate outside of the bounds of what we want, you will slowly probably find yourself gone at a certain point, or you they will just put the people in positions that they want if there is a bad fit.
This has been the Nick Khan media strategy. he had a long career and a successful career managing a wide variety of sports TV personalities like Stephen A. Smith and a lot of others. And he had a lot of relationships with people in media. When he came to WWE, he is quickly established and leveraged these relationships that he had within sports media to help WWE get exposure. But also, there's been an effort made by WWE to make relationships in a wide variety of media, whether that's mainstream media, sports media, business media, wrestling media. Yeah. And now you're seeing it. Let's take it to another level. Even more ambitious is to actually partner with these media outlets, whether that was the Ringer very early on in Nick Khan's tenure in WWE, whether that's Nick Khan personally investing in a sports business media outlet called John Wall Street, whether that's WWE more recently partnering with Front Office Sports, and now literally taking over the general pro wrestling satellite radio talk channel.
Which is probably like the most, like, what would you say? This is probably the most listened to wrestling radio show. Like, I don't know what Busted Open Radio's numbers are, but you have to imagine it's
not just the podcast. I think there is podcast distribution for it, but it's being distributed on satellite radio as well.
So, like, in all of these situations, like every single person attached to this will tell you, we've been told to just do the show we've always been doing, and nothing's going to change. In these media arrangements that I will call them, they don't have to be said. It will be it's drummed in that you will know that, do I really need to say this critical aspect? Am I just inviting a potential problem here? It's all of what is not said, but it's all of what is inferred, and it's just, it will in time simply, like, if there is a clash of coverage and it's not to WWE's liking, there will be quiet consequences for that, and people are easily replaceable in these situations. So I wish everyone the best, but this is like, WWE is just putting its stamp over this channel, and if you don't think it is, like, I just, like, the optics are impossible. Like, it would be more beneficial if they just leaned in and say, yes, we are the WWE channel now. It is as clear as day what we are doing here, and you operate within that prism. Like, we are here. We basically are like an extension of WWE. Like, we are their radio channel now.
Part of what makes it less of a problem is there's no hiding here. They're not trying to pretend that they're independent, as in terms of like being wide open about it and say, yes, we are having a relationship here. It's a business partnership, and in a lot of ways it makes sense, and particularly if they're being able to monetize rights that are not already monetized. I wonder what Netflix thinks of this, right? And ESPN, that they're selling the audio only rights to their programming.
That part was surprising to me, that would be, I would think, like, I don't know what the demand would be like. Like, we've never had, like, the audio rights to any of these shows. Like, that just has not been a thing that they have shopped. I can't imagine it's like some seismic amount that they are getting for this. I would be curious.
There's WF Radio. WF Radio back in the day, those were radio broadcasts like this with different announcers for pay-per-views, right? So, yes. And they weren't infringing on rights, right? They were, infringing is not the right word, right? But they weren't.
They were in limited markets, like the Armed Forces Network.
It wasn't about rights that were already licensed to somebody for video, for live broadcast, right? This was a pay-per-view product that they were selling directly to consumers in partnership with carriers. But we've got the live rights, live video broadcast rights licensed to Netflix or ESPN or Versant or CW or what am I leaving out? I guess Netflix. So, but especially then we're taking the audio. Yeah.
Especially at a time when Netflix, like, what are they diving into right now? Like, like, granted, it's video podcast content, but it's more in line with like this type of type of content that they are providing for you. But yeah, regardless, this is where, you know, I'm sure WWE will make a big push towards this beginning on Monday and funneling tons of guests on the various Sirius platforms, and it's a place to house like their Cody show, Stephanie McMahon show, and
I do want to give credit though to the outlet who broke this news this morning. Exclusive. This was an exclusive from the Hollywood Reporter. They did have it a few minutes before the press releases were sent out.
Are you skeptical of anything?
No!
That one's staying, okay? I'm keeping that one, okay? It's joining the sound wall of fame, okay?
I've tracked down the JPMorgan report, okay? You're
Okay,
not going to find any other podcast, whether they're co-opted, whether they're state media, anywhere that's going to track down the JPMorgan stock analyst, equity analyst report from David Karnofsky himself. And we're going to talk about what
I
they
am sure
say
that Cody Rhodes is going to tackle this same JPMorgan analysis on his next show, maybe his debut show.
Cody Rhodes,
Sirius.
step up your game. If you're so serious about the business and looking into the economics of pro wrestling, step up your game. And on the next, what are we talking about? Talk about the JPMorgan report.
This is what we're talking about.
Shares are down 4%. This is not particularly new. What's the date on this? It's not. Oh, it is July 21st. Okay, so it's only from 2 days ago. Okay, so shares are down 4% off the highs of late June. While we think this partly reflects a broader trade in live event stocks, blah blah blah. Sentiment has become more mixed of late. I think this is what our listener Andrew is getting at. TKO is now post-catalyst on some major events: the White House, the McGregor return, and injury,
And injury. Both are weighted equally, the return and the injury.
Of course, those are all non-WWE events. And there remains concern around the state of WWE creative and ticket demand, including for upcoming SummerSlam. We can go to that next. The latter, we think, is a reasonable consequence of comping last year's event in New York, or comparing it to, I think. Not giving away free tickets, I think, is what Karnofsky means here.
Yes.
And the still relatively new shift to a two-night format. Regarding the creative question, we're not dismissive. Though, as we've written previously, periodic fan dissatisfaction isn't new, and certainly has been worse. Parentheses, AEW's rise in 2019, for instance. Viewer data, meanwhile, looks mixed, with Raw on Netflix trending down year over year. Though we estimate PLEs are up, SmackDown comparisons are difficult given Nielsen's methodology changes. Dave Karnofsky's right on top of this. We could go on here, but I think that's the bulk of what Andrew was asking us about. There are good analysts. Well, there are analysts who are in touch with things that we in the wrestling media chatter zone we like to talk about, and there's very few of them, right? Dave Karnofsky pays good attention to things at times. Brandon Ross is aware of things. Morgan Stanley is usually good in a general analysis kind of way. I don't know if Ben Swinburne's reading the wrestling media news, but it is refreshing to see that there's some awareness and taking into account of the sentiment. I don't know, any thoughts on that? We're going to get into all those topics, actually, in particular, the viewership and the SummerSlam. So yeah,
we're going to get into all of that. I would love to know Laura Martin's thoughts on the current creative trend.
I don't think Needham analyst Laura Martin has been covering TKO of late.
No, she was taken off that beat, unfortunately. Always a fun contributor on the earnings calls. Coming off the last topic, we should just talk a little bit about the ESPN cuts this week. They did extend to Andreas Hale, who was the ESPN lead reporter when it came to pro wrestling. He reported on MMA. He reported on boxing. Of course, we covered pretty extensively the fallout of last year's whole letter grade problems, where Andreas Hale had the audacity to give WrestlePalooza a C for that show. If anything, he might have been generous. And So after that, he did one more letter grading for Crown Jewel in Perth. And then after that, the letter grades just magically, they disappeared. And also what disappeared was pretty much any WWE talent being profiled on ESPN. Like no interviews. There was, of course, there was earlier this year, the Darby Allin feature that was prominently displayed on AEW programming. And for all the people who are like, oh, what are you guys talking about? You guys are just trying to conjure up some controversy. Well, then Andreas was denied WrestleMania credentials. With their broadcast partner, they turned down Andreas Hale for credentials at WrestleMania in his hometown. So he tweeted about this. And since that time, he has continued to report on the Janel Grant story. He did a whole timeline of Conor McGregor's all of his legal issues, including the Nikita Hand case in the lead up to UFC 329, and then was part of the cuts here. Now, I would think that, okay, it's one of those things, Brandon, where you could look at this and, okay, ESPN, they have much wider cuts. It's not like this was just an individual release of Andreas Hale.
Arl Ravitch was cut. Is Ryan Clark the name of the guy who was
Ryan
cut,
Clark,
who found out on air during a commercial break that he was cut?
Cam Newton, yeah, like some pretty big like on-air talent are part of these.
So this was
cuts.
quite broad.
It was broad. Like this, they cited it basically with the takeover of the NFL Network. These were broader, like Disney cuts as well. So, nevertheless, we reached out to ESPN, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically that did the letter grading or Andreas's credential issue for WrestleMania play any factor in the decision to cut this specific talent? And it's basically said, like, if not, it'd be pretty easy to just deny that. Like, just no, that had absolutely no bearing on it. ESPN opted not to take that tact, and it wasn't they didn't reply to us. It was they declined to comment on the nature of his cut, which again, that does not confirm that those factors inform their decision making, but it certainly doesn't deny it either. And I think just simply observing this, that if you're looking, you've got to make a certain number of cuts to get to a certain number in this department. This is somebody that was basically put on the sidelines from WWE PR and was not able to have access to talent, that was not able to have access to was not able to have access to shows, and that put him, I believe, in an expendable position to ESPN at this point. And I think it's hard not to read it like that. That for someone that had, covered a lot on their digital side, that this is not somebody that is of the level that you would imagine of like some of the larger cuts that ESPN was making.
I think it speaks to the point you're making about when we were discussing Busted Open or SiriusXM in terms of who are the media manipulation is not a result of, in most cases, influencing people and nudging them into, hey, you got to say this, you got to do that, you got to believe, pretend that you believe in this. It's through building relationships with people, because often if you make a relationship with somebody, they usually don't want to be mean to you, at least publicly. But also, you do things like this where people who dare to critique WWE honestly, arguably fairly, don't end up staying in these nice positions with ESPN, which is the worldwide leader in sports. So the people who do end up surviving there, the sort of natural selection, ends up being the people who have the opinions and the decision-making patterns that are palatable for people in power and their partners.
This is, to me, just, it's so clear that did Andreas Hale was he ever told by anybody, hey, we're now a partner with WWE, we're running their PLEs on ESPN Unlimited. Like, remember, they're a broadcast partner. Take it easy on them. They didn't have to say that. And the fact is, somebody is going to step into this role now that Andreas previously held. And when that person is taking this position, you think they're going to go guns blazing for job security? Someone that's probably a lot earlier in their career than Andreas is, that just wants to get in on the WWE beat. Like this, none of this has to be said. None of this has to be written out. None of this has to be told to any employee. It's simply observe, or it's to your peril that you are seeing an example here of like what would be the incentive for someone that is just trying to start off on the digital side of ESPN to chase after the Janel Grant story, for instance. Like, what is your incentive beyond your own kind of belief in like what this job should be? It's a very different job when you're working for a company that has direct ties to the league, to the promotion that you are covering. And that is just the reality in 2026.
Nobody tells anybody what to think or what to write about or what to talk about. You end up being the person who wants to talk about the things that are palatable. You end up surviving and making it to the next year and the next job if you're naturally inclined to do and to say and to write the things that are acceptable.
Andreas's fault was being a reporter in a situation where that was viewed as a detriment to his job.
Mind you, when this relationship began with ESPN and WWE, broadcasting the premium live events, someone had the audacity to ask the executives on the media call if there would be continued independence for ESPN's journalists to write independently about WWE. And the executives on the call, who granted were programming executives and not editorial executives. Naturally, you didn't have editorial executives on the call for the launch of PLEs on ESPN's streaming app. But these executives nonetheless were emphatic. They didn't take time to hem and haw.
With the increase of this partnership between WWE and ESPN, is there reassurance you can provide to us that reporters who report on WWE for ESPN will still have full independence in how they cover WWE or even WWE's competitors for that matter?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is an emphatic yes.
Unequivocal yes. I mean, that's separation of church and state. Ben, I know we have some PR folks on here that could probably underscore that, but yes.
And so this is a broader media pattern, right? This is a well beyond WWE story. Why are these cuts happening in the first place? Because there's this, you will know the detail maybe better than I will. The NFL has bought a stake in ESPN. Am I getting that right?
And ESPN is taking over the NFL network.
So ESPN has this deep ownership relationship with the NFL now, which is what's a bigger subject than the NFL for ESPN to cover? Well, you're just playing highlights and covering games. That's one thing. But what happens when you're talking about whether somebody's doing a good job or not, or whether there's wrongdoing involved, or whether there's ethics violations, or whether concussion protocols being handled right, things like that.
There's literally beyond your own pride in your work as a journalist, and this is going to rapidly change with the next cycle of reporters that are coming into this industry. There's literally no incentive for you for job security to come into an ESPN and go down the route of a Bob Lay or the work they did on Outside the Lines or like a Jeremy Schaap, and you're looking at the impact of concussions in the NFL. Like, look at, and this is the part that maybe doesn't get enough focus, is, so much of our focus is on WWE. This is what WWE and all of these sports leagues are going to do. It's a case of how much weight can we push and at what resistance level are we going to receive? And in this case, it became very clear to me watching this story that, there was the digital side of ESPN, and then there was the on-air section of ESPN. And it looked like ESPN Digital pretty much got nothing after this whole grading issue. And it was just a lot of their own, like, no interviews. It was like very minimal.
There was the Heyman interview, which was not Andreas Hale, who's a different byline.
Right. Like, Andreas got like nothing after this, before even the credentials were revoked. The ESPN, all of the WWE coverage would happen on television. And to me, like, you are ESPN. You are the bigger entity in this relationship with WWE. And at the very least, you would have thought like there would have been some backing of their own person. But that was not the case here. And that tells you everything you need to know as someone that works at ESPN, knowing that if you get sideways with the league that you're covering, they're looking out for the overall interest of the company and not upsetting the league, the promotion that they are paying all these millions and millions of dollars for, versus you, the reporter, that is a dime a dozen in their mind, in their point of view. And the idea that we are just this is happening at a WWE level over a grading of a pay-per-view. What do you think is happening at like the larger NFL level, that they would never want to compromise that, because the loss of an NFL would be detrimental to any of these networks to lose or go sideways with the biggest league in the world.
Now, a question how much relationships are a factor here too. This is a different WWE than in 2019 and prior. If George Barrios didn't have an established long-time relationship with various ESPN executives, Nick Khan does. And there are deep relationships there, I'm sure. So the level of influence, I think, is something to ask about.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that, this is not just a Nick Khan era. Like, I remember when, like, you would hear stories of, like, WWE just, like, with TSN up here in Canada, they would get upset about stuff that would be on, like, the TSN wrestling website. Like, they have always had a care about this, but they have a lot more muscle now in the overall scope of things. And in this case, it was like WWE pushed its weight and ESPN fell over. Like, that is how this worked out. And now Andreas is the collateral damage in this whole thing. I mean, it's unfortunate he's out of a job. I'm glad he's out of this position. I'm sure this last year was not the most enjoyable in terms of kind of being in this spot. But like, this is just the reality that when you are working with an entity of this size, it comes with the lack of security, because cuts are going to be routine at places like ESPN. And number two, it's not necessarily like league versus reporter. Maybe in another era, it would have been the reporter who they would have backed. And now it's not the case, unless you are a superstar, the level of, of a reporter. If you were like your NFL insider, for instance. But it's like the rank and file reporters, it's just a tough industry to exist in an entity like an ESPN or any broadcast partner.
It makes me wonder about what's the future of media and journalism that we're moving into. One in which actual independent, fair reporters are, especially in maybe niche fields like ours, are more and more relegated to these relatively small platforms. You see a lot of reporters just leaving major outlets and starting Substack and things like that. And
which gives you plenty of freedom, but none of the protections of these larger places, which is going to, like, if you're an investigative reporter, that lack of protections, that is going to impact like the level of stories you can necessarily go after. And it is going to be like, there's the push and pull. Your independence it's something I value a lot more than being on a bigger platform, but it comes with pluses and minuses.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason why a big brand and platform is important too, is because then you can get people oftentimes to talk to you. Whereas if you're not from a big, well-known, established media brand, they might not ever comment.
That is That is very true, right there. Let's go to the Netflix viewership stats. I knew you would turn this around into some beautiful graphs, and you did not disappoint. So this came out last week. Netflix every 6 months, soon to be every 12 months, put out their what we watched report. Basically, you get an Excel spreadsheet of every pretty much every program on Netflix and its viewership that accompanies it. So for the purposes of this show, we will be focusing on WWE's viewership. And for the second year in a row, what is the granddaddy of them all? What is the biggest show of the year? The Royal Rumble. Where the whole calendar should be peaked towards. The Royal Rumble, the most popular show of the year for WWE.
And this was a Royal Rumble that started at what time in the day?
You're right. It was an afternoon show, so I think it was around 2 in the afternoon. This was in Riyadh. So you're right. Unlike 2025, which was a U.S. show, this was in the afternoon, and it was still viewed by more people than either night of WrestleMania individually.
So I guess what's most fascinating about this data is we have the PLE data. And remember, this is...
without ESPN. Yeah.
Correct. This is only international. Yes, there's surely some degree of VPN users. I tend to think it's negligent. I don't know that it's going to make a big difference on these numbers, particularly when we're talking about numbers that are rounded to the nearest 100,000, which peak out around 3 million. So anyway, I looked at all of the pay-per-views. So this is the trouble with this data is these we're getting every 6 months a drop of data, right? So we get all the data, we get all the pay-per-views and all the episodes of Raw and SmackDown, etc. And they tell us how much those episodes from before that period were watched. You know, we've got old WrestleManias that are still being watched a little bit. Anyway, so what I've drawn here if you're watching video is in purple is this is how much viewership, let's call it, these PLEs / pay-per-views got in their first 6-month window. And of course, Royal Rumble in January is at the beginning of a 6-month window, and Night of Champions in June is at the end of the 6-month window. But anyway, we get a strong idea, I think, of looking at year over year. Here's Royal Rumble of this year versus Royal Rumble of last year, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, etc. And what we see is, I think, as a popularity story, I think this gives us some sort of reflection that needs to be mixed in with a preponderance of other things, but this gives us some sort of reflection, I think, about what the state of popularity is for WWE that is not hindered by the continuous downfall of, the pay TV bundle. This is Netflix streaming that is much more stable and, if anything, growing over time. So what? Royal Rumble, basically flat from last year. It's up 3%. Again, we're dealing with numbers that are rounded to the nearest 100,000. So I've got it was 3.1 million in this 6-month window versus last year's Royal Rumble, 3 million even. So slightly up. Elimination Chamber, the same number. Now, this is convenient, isn't it? This is first-party data. This is Netflix just telling you what people on Netflix are watching. This is not some independent company like a Nielsen or somebody else coming in here and saying, we are the arbiter of data telling you the truth and auditing it. No, this is Netflix themselves telling us. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, WrestleMania Night 1, 2.7 million this year versus 2.4 million last year. So that's up 13%. Night 2, the big night, up 7%, 3 million versus 2.8. The Backlash was down. I don't know if there's a story there. Was Backlash just more interesting last year?
Well, I think for all the 2025 shows, let's remember Cena is part of all of these shows. Like that Chamber show had not just Cena, but it also had The Rock advertised for that show in Toronto. So naturally, you did have kind of like the Cena effect last year as well. But on the WrestleMania side, like this is the first like positive story of year-to-year comparison for WrestleMania, for all the talk about like tickets being down and going back to Vegas. I mean, if we're just going by these international numbers, and let's suppose the ESPN numbers are in line with this, like it would tell you that, at least from that standpoint, that this year's WrestleMania did generate at least more interest the day of people actually wanting to watch the show that don't have to fork down $600 for a ticket.
there could be other macro effects I considered in here too. Like India comes online to Netflix in like April of last year. The India subscribership seems relatively small, although WWE fandom is quite large in India and the population is massive. France and maybe some other territories do come on in the middle of this comparison regardless. Clash at the Castle or Clash in Italy, it was this year versus was it Clash in Paris last year?
Yes.
That was up 23%, 2.6 million versus, 1.6 million versus 1.3 million. And Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia in both years, but in different months. No, both in June, completely flat at 1 million. Was Clash in Italy like a much more attractive show this year? Any ideas there?
It did have Brock, if that made a difference. Beyond that, he was, I would say, of the lineups, it was probably a bit more attractive this year. It should be noted as well for both Night of Champions, we're talking about pretty much like a 3-day window before the cutoff for this 6-month period. So that million number, not that like last year it grew by 400,000, but like the cutoff is June 30th, and these events happened like the final weekend of June.
I think it's a fair year-over-year comparison to the event of the same name, but it's not a fair comparison to other PLEs because they don't have the same amount of time to collect viewership. We do get this is a longer view of the PLEs. We do get some SmackDown year-over-year data to look at here, and by this view, the international viewing of SmackDown is up in like almost every week.
Yeah.
Which is certainly a different story. As I've got it ready to pull up here. Maybe I don't, but it's certainly a different story than what we see for SmackDown in the United States, which is significantly down from a year ago. So if we look at just the averages across these windows, you've got Q1 up, you've got Q2 flat. So these are at least non-negative stories that are a little contrary to certainly attendance data that we're seeing that may be offset by ticket prices, to some of the TV viewership numbers that we're seeing.
Clearly, international viewers gluttons for the 3-hour punishment that Friday nights provide as well in this first quarter.
They love it. They love the content, okay?
If I could, I'd make it 7 hours every week, said
that's right.
Executive. So SmackDown's up. That's got to mean Raw is just killing it, right?
So Raw in Q1, of course, and I didn't do the math and say, what if we eliminate that massive premiere episode in January 2005? But okay, Q1 is down, but in Q2, we're well removed in that point. At that point, the average in Q2 is 2.8 million global views versus 3 million flat in the prior year. So that is a little bit down.
And this encompasses everybody with Raw,
Correct.
Unlike SmackDown.
Correct.
So this gives us a pretty clean picture of the entire Netflix universe. There's no unknown audience that is hidden. Like this is the viewership.
Right. And now I finally got this is SmackDown viewership on the USA Network. In the United States, the blue line is this year, the pink line is last year. And it's down year to date 17%. Is that correct? I think that's correct. 17% is the degree to which the U.S. viewership is down. Surely there's some Nielsen methodology issues there. There's maybe some cord cutting that could be, let's give it up to 10%, something like that. That could be a factor. So it's just becoming a harder and harder data world to follow. NXT,
not
stable
so
as can be. Stable as can be.
There are 200,000 people that the world stops Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. They will sit down.
Every single Tuesday, they watch it all over the world outside the U.S. The problem here is, again, Netflix is not giving us the granular decimals of precision. They're rounding everything to the nearest 100,000, and it just always rounds to 200,000. These numbers genuinely, if you average them up, do average out to different numbers, but we're dealing with single data points that are already rounded to the nearest 100,000. So I'm not putting them in a number more precise than the nearest 100,000. The Unreal data is meaningful. Season 2 of WWE Unreal.
Everyone was interested in seeing what this series would be, and there's been I was just reading a story this week, I think it was on Slate, about the amount of second seasons on Netflix that see this big drop-off, and Unreal certainly fell into that. And I think for many people, I think they were curious to see this first season, and I think you whittled away a lot of the curiosity viewers for season 2, that this was, generally it's a show that it shows you a little bit behind the scenes, but I don't think it's going to such a degree that it's like this transformative series. But like, of all the numbers we've gone through, this is the biggest drop off that we have seen, and this comes right as season 3 has just been released this week. So I mean, you pretty much lost almost half the audience of season 1.
And I would suggest this is a pretty fair comparison, right? We're looking at right now a 43% decline from season 1 to season 2. Why is it a fair comparison? Because we're looking at season 1, which was measured with 4.9 million global views after 155 days from its release date, versus season 2, which is being measured at 161 days from its release date. What I'm saying is they had about the same amount of time to gather viewership, and it's down 43% from season 1 to season 2.
And so I'm thinking here, like, if I, the viewer, watch all 5 episodes of Unreal, I'm counted as 5 viewers for this, you would assume, right?
Global views is simply, I think, the number of hours that were watched divided by the hours of the episode.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So think of it like average minute audience. On average, how many episodes are in this season?
5 for each.
5. On average, each episode on average, each episode was being watched by 2.8 million accounts.
Right. So my point being there is that, in theory, it's, you can either look at it as, it's a fairly, like, you would assume most of these people watching Unreal are WWE viewers themselves, or people that are at least sampling it for that particular time. I wouldn't look at this 2.8 million as this disastrous figure. It's a massive drop off from season 1.
It's about what an episode of Raw does.
That's it. And I mean, the goal of this to me would be, people find this show, and this is the on-ramp to then you tune into Raw. Are they finding new viewers out of a show like this? And do they see this as like a worthwhile, like, it's going to be interesting if it gets a 4th season, because my guess would be, just from anecdotally, it seems that, like, this week I've seen so little in comparison, obviously, to season 1, but it just seems like, it's like, I would imagine that it's going to be a similar decline for season 3, or at least a decline.
Do people effing even know about season 2, season 3 happening?
Well, they love to keep secrets, so maybe there's something that we don't know about that Yoda himself is keeping to himself. But there you go. Those were kind of all the key data points. Now, when does ESPN release their viewership data? When do those come out?
As soon as they are the worldwide leader in streaming.
Well, that's going to be quite the wait for us right now. I mean, maybe they will at some point put that out for us, and then we can have a more robust picture of the PLE story, as they would like to describe it. But do go check out Brandon's charts at Wrestlenomics.com, making sense of all this these data points. WWE is going to be very busy next. Well, we don't know when. We know it's going to be in April. Any of those weekends could be WrestleMania weekend. I think it's just going to be, they're going to give us a heads up like 2 weeks in advance. Hey, WrestleMania, 2 weeks. They are going to be hosting watch parties of WrestleMania in New York City at the Infosys Theater at Madison Square Garden. And then they will be followed by live shows on the Saturday and Sunday night, one from AAA and then NXT Stand and Deliver. So they are promoting the fact that they will have watch parties with immersive live viewing experiences as they transform the venue into this immersive viewing experience with giant LED screens. your favorite brand activations and merchandise to be offered. And it looks like there will be watch parties in cities around the country, including major commercial venues and select Cosm locations, which will be announced soon. So this is the U.S.
When should I book my flight to Riyadh, though?
Hang tight. We're figuring out some dates. Do you think that the current home of WrestleMania 43 hasn't been built yet? Will they get a brand new stadium for WrestleMania built in late March?
I don't know. You'd think that the stadium that they popped up in 3 weeks for Royal Rumble would just be the stadium that they do. That is in Riyadh, right? Unless they took it down already.
It could have. I don't know the status of that building. It might have just been a quick setup and tear down at the end of it. So certainly there's a lot of discussion about will AEW attach themselves to this weekend in the U.S.? Do you think that would be a prudent move? Is looking at the idea that, hey, WWE is going to host wrestling here, but we could come in and be like the signature show somewhere in New York City. Because you wouldn't be running against WrestleMania. You'd be running your live event against either AAA or NXT, and suddenly it does create this kind of weird WrestleMania weekend that doesn't feature WrestleMania itself in the city.
I think it's far more. No, I think this is kind of minor, right? Like what AEW should be looking to capitalize on is some other big. Do AEW Revolution or something on a different.
You would run it a separate weekend.
Yes, and say this is the big wrestling weekend for everybody, and the indie events are all going to be encouraged and broadcast in my AEW, and we'll do it a few weeks apart or a month apart, and there'll be a big baseball stadium AEW event in here, and see if Madison Square Garden's available. Can you get into there? Would you have how many antitrust laws would you have to overcome?
There would be some FOIA requests, I'm sure, on what those dealings would be like. I think if you can read the room with Tony Khan, he is certainly planning something. I don't know if it would be this specific weekend. I'd be curious if when you finally release this information about when the dates will actually be. Like that could be a case where Saudi Arabia has not locked down what weekend.
I'm sure they're beholden to whatever the General Entertainment Authority wants.
We're going to punt until September, guys. We're just too packed for any tourists.
And if people don't travel to Riyadh, I guess that's on the GEA. I'm sure they'd be glad to promote what the date is if they were able.
Final couple of notes. We have Redemption coming up this weekend. We have about almost 6,400 tickets distributed at the Bell Center, which is, I don't think that's overwhelmingly strong for a big city like Montreal for this pay-per-view on the weekend. But Tony Khan did do his call today with promoting the event. I guess the major news out of this was he did confirm that Ty Mello had recently asked for her release. She just wants a break from wrestling, and he is going to grant her that release. He was not shy in sharing his displeasure of false reports that had been out regarding Sammy Guevara, about Anna Jay, and also theorizing that, as we're picking up momentum, it's always interesting how we pick up some momentum, we're on a hot streak, and then these stories start to get reported out. And he didn't really expand on that thought, but that's his that was his working theory, is that why do these negative AEW stories pop up as we are garnering momentum with the company?
There's really no shortage of AEW negativity at any point in the company's history, I would say.
Tony's just not looking in the right places. It definitely exists. Also stated that when the Young Bucks attacked him last year with the Meltzer driver, it's water under the bridge. Matt, Nick, and I, all Christian people, we believe in forgiveness. So that's good to know. Other than that, he wouldn't say that. This one was funny because if you have followed, TSN has put out this promotional material that was very clearly dated, promoting Kenny Omega and MJF for this pay-per-view on Sunday. And it was brought up to Tony, and he still couldn't bring himself to say that, yeah, that was the planned main event for Sunday. But, I mean, it was very clear it was. And this pay-per-view has, it has been, the deck has been shuffled as they present this show, which does kind of it looks like a very good show on paper. But I think many people, when you're spending this amount of money for a pay-per-view, this is the closest AEW has felt to sort of like a lame duck show before their big event next month.
Yes, he did get a drop of David Ellison in there. Excited for the merger.
That one was amazing because it was I think the question was about Kenny Omega and MJF supposedly headlining this show, and then all of a sudden Tony Khan is explaining why this merger is not creating a monopoly. I was like, how did we get to this answer? How did we get from one to the other? But yes, he did mention David Ellison.
From Jason Umpers's report, Tony was asked whether or not Omega MJF was tabbed for Redemption given the TSM promotion. He said that he had to keep some sleight of hand in these things and was happy with how things played out. He added that he was optimistic about the WBD Paramount merger somehow and working under David Ellison.
Yes. Kenny Omega and MJF, great match. David Ellison, big fan, and all of that was stitched together. On the Paramount WBD merger front, so earlier this week, a temporary restraining order was issued by the judge that is overseeing this case. This after 12 state attorneys general have filed a case alleging that antitrust laws have been violated with this merger. This is led by Rob Bonta of California, and they're stating that this merger would cause harm in the areas of basic cable, of tentpole theatrical releases, and wide release theatrical distribution. So the initial temporary restraining order was for 2 weeks, but earlier today, they extended that by an additional 2 weeks until August 17th to give the parties in the case more time to set an extended schedule for legal proceedings, something that is near and dear to your heart, Brandon. These schedules. Is this the death knell for AEW?
No!
So what's happening here? I learned, by the way, how many states did you say?
12.
11. 11.
What, is Washington one of them? I don't know.
Massachusetts is a commonwealth.
Oh,
not a state. It is a commonwealth. Anyway, so temporary restraining order, 14 days. I didn't know this. It's been extended now. I think there's going to be a hearing.
August 3rd.
August 3rd. And what's next on the table is I believe, what's called preliminary injunction, which if the judge decides that a preliminary injunction is appropriate, then that would mean that this merger cannot happen until this case is resolved, if at all. If the case,
it could be a super long process, and the date that is important is September 30th, because that is the date that Paramount had ensured Warner Brothers this would be completed by then, to the point that they agreed to this ticking fee that for every day after September 30th that it does not close comes at a tune of $7.3 million per day. Great if you're a Warner Brothers shareholder. Not so great if you're a Paramount. That would be forking out $625 million a quarter if this transaction does not complete. And if you're thinking, oh man, if they don't get to the deadline, Ellison should just pull the plug and move away. He could do that at the cost of a $7 billion breakup fee with Warner Brothers Discovery, on top of the $2.8 billion they had to pay Netflix just to get them out of the way as well. So that is the date that Paramount is going to be, I think, using all available methods to resolve this. Because yes, if a restraining order, if an injunction is granted and this has to go to a trial, it gives these states' attorney generals a massive amount of leverage here, because they know that Paramount has this gun to their head after September 30th and are going to want to settle this.
I won't try to analyze the merits too much, but the antitrust allegation would be something in the nature of, you're about to put together these two companies that would combine a lot of movie studios, that would combine a lot of TV networks. I wonder if the defendants, who are Paramount, Skydance Corporation, and Warner Brothers Discovery, I think, would argue that, well, the media business has changed quite a bit, and you have now Netflix and YouTube and all these things that have added and diversified this competition. Anyway, so this case was originally filed on July 13th. That was the first filing. This is an amazing docket.
Wow.
This case is 10 days old, and it has, for people watching video, I'm scrolling through all the docket entries, 166 docket entries in 10
That's a lot of
days.
billable hours.
There's some lawyers that are busy.
Yeah,
this case.
This is all your carriage fees. This is all of the Ellison stockpile just being put to work. So probably an expensive, arduous case for them to go through here. But in all seriousness, like for AEW to surmise what this will mean for AEW, it's obviously the longer this goes, if it's Paramount that is already going to be so, like there's going to be so much debt attached to this. And it's going to be a case of combing through every area of this company where there are going to be redundancies and casualties of all of this. And where AEW will fit, it will either be an asset or a liability under this ownership should this merger go through. And I think it's way too premature to know where an AEW will land at the end of this whole thing.
I mean, I guess it's the best thing for AEW if this merger doesn't happen on its face. But if the merger doesn't happen and it exudes all of this economic pressure on the surviving entity, then there's a lot of moving pieces. So I don't know.
And the final thing, SummerSlam updated tickets. This coming after their sale with a code where you can get tickets now starting at $25. Well, they've seen some movement this week. $29,314 for night one, $29,169 for night two. So that is where we are at. All in London has now surpassed 32,000 tickets distributed. So Brandon is projecting 36,000 for night number one.
I've done more math.
Oh, you have got the projection now up to 46,000. And I also did some math here that since Kenny Omega won the title, they've seen a 14% increase in tickets distributed as well. So,
yeah. Well, Aftermath was such a hit last week. So this is the same. We did this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. This is the same projection formula that we used a couple weeks ago, and both of these, both All In and the two nights of SummerSlam, are looking in much better shape. I believe this model, let's call it, was predicting 40,000 as the final number last time we did this 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and is now predicting 46,000 for All In. I think, as you mentioned, 32,000 is where it's at most recently, right? There is this, as people watching video can see, there is this big jump that they had in the last, 10 days or so. Night one of SummerSlam is now projected under this model to do 36,000. And it did see a big jump here with the discounts here, and that's encouraging some movement. And it's a very similar story for night two, just ever so slightly higher. Again, projecting 37,000 as the final number for Sunday, 36,000 for the final number for Saturday. Of course, this is all WrestleTix data that we're using here, which is itself an estimate of the ticket map.
And that's going to bring an end to the show. So we hope everyone is up to date on the world of pro wrestling at large, whether it be the state of media, whether it is the state of Netflix viewership, or Brandon's latest challenge in regards to the merger lawsuit. All thoughts can be sent to Brandon at Wrestlenomics.com as he will continue to take us through the process, the scheduling process that is the merger lawsuit.
Yes.
Anything else you are working on, Brandon, in the near future for us to look forward to?
Not immediately, I don't think so. The challenges are happening. If the judge accepts our schedule, we could have some new filings as early as August 5th. However, I can't necessarily tell you whether there'll be anything newsworthy coming out of them. but we'll see.
Well, you can go follow all of Brandon's work, Wrestlenomics.com or Patreon.com/Wrestlenomics. He does have a whole breakdown of the Netflix viewership stats with comparisons to 2025. So interesting data, regardless, to see what shows are performing for WWE and what not so much. You can also follow
media. You have to support it.
It's you know what, if you want to support, then go to patreon.com/Wrestlenomics or postwrestlingcafe.com for your support of Wrestlenomics and Post Wrestling.
That's right. If you don't support it, all you'll have is companies that are in partnerships with companies that you watch.
No!
We will talk to you next week.